Om Araiva Ratanabhau Samhatra Yatra Nadyaha Sha Eshon Chascharate Buhura Jayamanaha Omityevam Jayathatmanam Svastivaha Paraya Tamasaha Parastat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. There, in the center, in the heart, where all the subtle nerve endings meet, like the spokes of a chariot wheel at the hub, abides the Atman, ever stationary but becoming manifold. Meditate upon that self as Om, and Godspeed to you in crossing over to the farthest shore beyond all darkness. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachu Brahm Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Vidto Vidtu. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, free of all taint, the essence of all things which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly. There shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Welcome to SRV San Francisco. This week we are coming live to you from our San Francisco ashram, the Healing Center here, and we also are continuing on in our study of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which we've been at for several years now, unwrapping sloka by sloka in traditional fashion all the teachings that are permeating that beautiful scripture, one of the 10 or 11 really authentic Upanishads that Shankaracharya, the great Advaitin, back in around 700 AD, did his commentaries on. And although there are a whole other 99 or so other Upanishads which are definitely worth looking into in his short 32-year-old life, Shankara didn't have time to comment on all 108 of them, evidently. So he did do that service of leaving behind testament on these 10 or 11 Upanishads. Shvetashvatara Upanishad is one of the unique ones, being more contemporary, so it's a little bit more understandable to today's Western mind and earthly mind, the mind that's struggling to work itself out of bondage called Maya, and the mind which is also trying to at the same time aspire to higher realization, the peace that passes all understanding, if you want to call it that. So Shvetashvatara Upanishad, that great Rishi Shvetashvatara left behind his own testament of this profound truth, non-dual truth. And although the Upanishads do contain many statements of a qualified non-dual nature as a sort of concession or addendum to the non-dual teachings, which are a little bit abstruse for people sometimes, the I and my Father level of understanding, where in the highest experience the world and separation goes away completely, and all you find is this one one consciousness that we just chanted about. It's Hiranmaye Pariposhi, shining by its own light, like the light of a sun, and indivisible in its nature, and pure and stainless. So those are ways of thinking that don't often occur to the human mind in a world that's so full of dualities and so full of impediments and so full of obvious impurities, both in nature and in human beings, and even in the cosmos we find chaos and violence, and in all its forms, whether it's purposeful or not, going on all around us, that ever-changing Maya, or what Buddha labeled as samsara. So that's why one looks to try and transcend suffering as best as one can. At first it's a matter of forbearance, and we'll look at that in terms of this chart, which I'm not going to call up yet, but it's a matter of using fire, as the Upanishad states. Shvetashvatara Upanishad says you bring out of earth the higher consciousness that's mixed there in with it. And you do that by the use of fire. So I put together a chart for us that shows the different levels of using fire, all the way up to yogic fire, which is a matter of mastering nature, not just falling victim to it or letting it have its sway over you, but actually mastering nature, not in the way that Western materialism has done it, which is finding that nature might better be left to its own devices and left alone, master it to a certain degree, but if you fail to respect it or revere it as a manifestation of Brahman, manifestation of higher consciousness, all of this has come out of you. The kingdoms of heaven are within you, and it's all come out and made itself manifest, which was again the nature of the chant we just used. Then it tends to backfire on you. And so when we say mastering nature, it means to transcend it, to get knowledge of it and use that knowledge to transcend it. So that's always a yogic way, or a higher way of thinking. And we will look at that very deeply, using the nature of fire, because each one of the 5 elements, air, earth, fire, water, and ether, are to be meditated upon in my tradition. They're not just to be taken for granted or left with a physical connotation only. They're to be looked at as manifestation of higher consciousness and intelligence, and also as signs, pointers, indicators that can, when used internally, open up doors to higher intelligence and understanding, and that peace that follows both, the peace and bliss that follows both, as Vivekananda said. So here on the very cusp of Navaratri, which starts next week, or actually, yes, next week, Friday is the first day of Navaratri, a 10-day worship of Divine Mother of the Universe. Shakti, that's a kind of fire too. Shakti, fire, power, dynamism. That's that active side of Brahman. Dynamic, we call it. So here on that cusp of that, we have arrived at chapter 4 of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which mentions Shakti right away at the outset. And we've been taking this Shvetashvatara Upanishad one sloka at a time, and therefore San Francisco has fallen behind the Portland ashram and other areas in study, so that we find ourselves only at the beginning of chapter 4, and we get to start at the beginning of a chapter, which is good for the San Francisco Sangha. So I'm going to abandon the sloka at a time approach for momentarily, and I'm going to read you the first 5 or 6 slokas of this Upanishad to give you a real taste of the teaching that is being given here at the beginning. So let's start there. I'll read this right straight out for you without commentary, and we can get the sense of the beginning of the first chapter of this great Upanishad. May that divine being, who though colorless, gives rise to various colors in different ways with the help of his own power, for his own inscrutable purposes, and who dissolves the whole world back inside itself in the end, may that one endow us with good thoughts. That itself is the fire, that is the sun, that is the air, that is the moon, that is also the starry firmament, that is Brahman, that is the waters, that is Prajapati, the great teacher. Thou art the woman, thou art the man, thou art the youth and the maiden too, thou art the old man who totters along leaning on the staff, thou art born with faces turned in all directions. Thou art the dark blue butterfly and the green parrot with red eyes. Thou art the thundercloud, the seasons and the oceans. Thou art without beginning and beyond all time and space. Thou art that one from whom all the worlds are born. There is a single female of red, white, and black color, who is unoriginated, and who produces numerous offsprings, resembling herself. By her side lies one unborn male out of attachment for her, while another male, also unoriginated, forsakes her after having enjoyed her. Two birds of beautiful plumage, who are inseparable friends, reside on the self-same tree. Of these, one eats the fruits of the tree with relish, while the other looks on without eating. Sitting on the same tree, the individual soul gets entangled and feels miserable, being deluded on account of his forgetting his divine nature. When he sees the other, the Lord of all, whom all devotees worship, and realizes that all greatness is his, then he is relieved of his misery. So that's the first 7 slokas of this Upanishad. You can see how the rishis of India produced and presented their scriptures, a combination of some very straightforward practical statements, some all-pervasive admittance, affirmation about God being in everything and everywhere, from the old man tottering on the staff to the young maiden, and to the parrot and the oceans. And so you also see they went into some great poeticism too when called upon. So the Upanishads are known for that beauty of poeticism mixed with non-dual truth. But then you also see some of these very abstruse teachings in there, like the single unborn female of 3 colors, and one male lying beside her and one male free from her. So there's also some very powerful symbolism contained, all in the first 7 slokas of this 4th chapter. So that's why I announced that Navaratri starts on Friday, 9 days and 9 nights of mother worship, because we are about to have our Durga Puja here in San Francisco, and we'll have another Durga Puja. That's a 3-hour worship of her up in Portland, and a full retreat this fall on Divine Mother up in the Columbia River Gorge. We call it the Columbus Day Columbia River Gorge Retreat. It's all about freedom. And so reading these first 7 slokas is really meant to bring our attention to the presence, the very subtle presence of Divine Mother Reality. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Brahman and Shakti are the two who are one, like fire in its heat and water in its wetness and so forth. It's something that you can't separate out, yet they have 2 apparently different natures, Brahman being completely formless, completely actionless, with no desire or motivation or need to move, just being completely peaceful and static. And then this dynamic side that comes rolling out of Brahman, unexplainably, inexplicably. All of a sudden you see worlds, and not only this world, but worlds in space, like they're saying here, oceans and fire and ether and air and water. But then you also have all these worlds inside. They talk about goddesses and deities and kingdoms of heaven within you, peopled with beings of different cosmic and collective design, just a plethora of worlds inside too, that obviously we go to in our dream state, and we also go there after passing from the body. The consciousness that moves according to the life force that takes charge of the realms of movement. We call it prana. Man does not live by bread alone. It's a force that operates things that we're not consciously aware of usually, and happen even against our own will sometimes, and without, unbeknownst to us, things that are going on everywhere that we're not aware of, and which we try to become aware of when we enter into the spiritual search, when we begin to seek earnestly for things outside the ken of physics and so forth. So a mention of the Divine Mother of the Universe is always very enlightening in that regard. It puts us in mind of a dynamic power, and it explains, all of a sudden we have this beautiful explanation for everything that's inexplicably moving and changing. Transformation is called. See, the West is under the hypnotism of the power of transformation. They see things changing externally, and so they believe that everything changes. And actually that's a good understanding to come to if you don't get attached to the change. But if you notice everything is changing and then take that changing universes and people and beings and moods and molecular structures and atomic particles and all of that, and you believe in the change, then you're in a pickle. Sri Krishna used to say, you should observe that, never get attached to it. You should stand back and observe it, because it's an appearance. It's not really happening. There is no such thing as transformation. If there is anything such thing as transformation, it's all going on in here. See, but when that mind becomes still, what Christ said, when thine eye becomes single, you see it all stop, like in deep sleep tonight. You see it all stop, like in your best meditation. You see it all stop, like at the time of your death. You see it all stop if you should be so fortunate as to get into samadhi after preparing yourself for it. Samadhi, nirvana, kaivalya, and so forth, those words for that non-dual state. And then you won't believe in it anymore. You'll just witness it and observe it. And then you'll have all the impetus you need to detach from it, to give it up if you want to put it monastically, to renounce it, or just to abide with it and let it flow by, and not go with the flow. Go with the flow is all right to do. You're talking about harmony and so forth, but go with the flow by believing in the transmutations of nature. No, that's not a good thing for you. You must draw back and see your changeless nature. That's the whole point about spiritual life. Spirituality shouldn't even exist if you don't believe that the whole point of it is to reach a stable point, a center, a focus, an essence, a source, reality instead of relativity. Might as well just throw spirituality out the window if you're not seeking to have that one singular experience of non-movement, non-actuation, non-transformation, non-origination. They put it in so many ways in the scriptures. So, without getting too far into the non-dual side of it, which we're always tempted to do if we are Advaita Vedantists, we bring in this beautiful teaching of Mother Shakti, Mahamaya, Mahashakti, Saraswati, Durga, Kali, that goddess who goes by many names. And we will be worshipping over the 10 days that are coming next week in Navaratri, Durga Puja. And that's because, as I said, it really begins to give us a good explanation for things that change. Now we can look at the things that change and assign them to a source. Not a physical source, but a source who is an overseer, or in this case an overseeress, the Divine Mother of Wisdom. And we begin to think of things less in terms of vibrating physical particles, and with her as our measuring point, you see. Look at things more in terms of vibrating pranic particles, vibrating intelligent particles, and leading right up to no particles at all, where everything just gets dissolved. See, like Ramakrishna is saying, a sugar cube just dissolves into tea. First it turns into 4 clumps, and then granules, and then it's just dissolved completely. Sort of like a person going to sleep, you see, or a person going into samadhi, or going to see God, however you want to put it. All of these things that are brought together by vibration just tend to release. time release pill, you see, to get rid of the headache of suffering. And then pretty soon all your problems go away and you're in samadhi, you're in the peace that all passes all understanding. And when you congeal that back together again, hopefully you bring that samadhi with you. So now you're a congealed luminary instead of a congealed deluded person. See, you know how things come apart and go together. And that's the whole Samkhya cosmology of our tradition, the 24 cosmic principles. You know how the cosmos is put together, and how it can come apart, and then how it can come back together again. So you begin to become the knower of cycles, huge cycles of time, not just a big bang with nothing at the end, but a non-originated beginning that breaks into waves like an ocean, and then goes back to peacefulness again when all the energy from all those waves are their cycle is over. And so it starts in Brahman, it proceeds in Brahman, and it ends in Brahman. See, and that process is all under the auspice of Divine Mother of the Universe, Shakti power. And so that also explains this very enigmatic fifth sloka here. There is a single female of red, white, and black colors. Black, that means basically the three gunas. You know, red, you could say activity. White, sattva, balance, peace. And black, you know, tamas, heaviness, density, weightiness, gravity. And however, the sloka says right after, who is unoriginated. So she has no beginning, middle, and end. If you're looking at anything in terms of beginnings, middles, and ends, then at best it'll only be a search to find out that there is no beginning, middles, and ends. That's how the seers of India have concluded. When they say non-origination, it's like a key word in English. We call it Adhyatma, or again, aparinama, non-transformation. You're talking about non-birth, non-death, or put it the other way, the appearance of birth and death that hypnotizes people into thinking they're being born and dying, when they're really, it's only their physical sheath that's doing that. Any other of the four sheaths inside of you is not getting born and not dying, including prana. Prana just flows on, energy just flows on too. And if you study your quantum physics or even your basic physics of late 1800s, you'll know that matter and energy is starting to convert, and there's no loss there. It's just waves. And when the waves are loosed, unbottled, then, you know, they flow out into space. And when they're capped, then they stop. See, so it's just cycles. That's all it is. And let there be light is sort of the end conclusion of it all. Should be for not only for the seer but for the scientist. Let there be light might as well explain the whole thing. There's just the energy, the light, and it's happening at different levels of consciousness. There is a consciousness behind it. In other words, call that God if you will, or don't leave it nameless. It's fine too. But some people want to leave it nameless. No. So. Unoriginated is then a key word in the tradition. Give up the idea of looking for beginnings, middles, and ends, and just say it is. And it's constantly, it's either in a formless state, or when it breaks into forms, it goes into cycles, and then it comes back to its formless state again. Those two things are called Purusha and Prakriti, soul and nature, if you want. And then just know that all of those belong to the supreme reality. And that's basically what it says next here. She is unoriginated. She produces numerous offsprings, which would be of course, everything from cosmic mind on down to the element earth, from the subtlest vibration right on down to granite, the densest vibration. She produces all this. She's the mother of production. She's called Drovya Shakti in that aspect. She produces substances out of mind. They're all energy, right, at different level, and they congeal or not at different levels. If they congeal at your dream state, then they're wispy, see, They're lighter. They can congeal down in your waking state. Then you've got a solid rock wall. You have to climb over it. You can't get through it. So, and same with obstacles in the mind. They get very rock-like too, and hard to penetrate. So you have to find ingenious ways of getting around them, like the wind. If it can't blow through it, it'll blow around it or over it, or find a hole in it. So that's this animating power that you need to master and get on your side. You see, so you can flow in the best possible ways and realize the inactive nature of the substratum. You can stop when you want to and go when you want to. You can proceed when you want to, and you can rest in static state when you want to, at your own will. That's freedom. So by her side lies one unborn male, out of attachment for her. So that's the bound soul, the soul that's bound to nature. She bound into these cycles of tamas, rajas, and sattva. Oh, now I'm depressed, you see. I'm brooding, I'm worried. Now I'm restless, you see. And, I feel pretty good today. There's a balance. You're going back and forth between these three colors of nature, the three modes, called gunas, qualities of mind. And quality here doesn't mean, we usually say the word quality, we think, something good, you see, something refined. But there are also qualities of mixed and unrefined nature. So that's what they mean by that. And then there is a male, also unoriginated, who forsakes her after having enjoyed her. So it's a very beautiful and powerful and pregnant sloka there. The male who enjoys nature and then forsakes her is the free soul. What I was just talking about. Sees the workings, knows what's going on, masters the process, frees itself of fear. Fear of what? Earth, fear of water, fear of fire, fear of air, fear of ether. Because you can say, I love breathing air, but all of a sudden, I'm in fear because I don't have air anymore. Say at the time of my death, you see, all of a sudden my lungs won't work anymore. Or whatever problem happens, the air is taken away. So wherever you have any principle, cosmic principle, you always have its opposite there. So what you want to do is master the fear of those things, and that comes by knowing it, by knowledge. You take the knowledge of ignorance out of your flesh the thorn of ignorance out of your flesh with the thorn of knowledge. And then you throw them both away, and you transcend ignorance and knowledge completely. It's how Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa put it. So that non-originated male who's freed himself from nature has attained kaivalya. That's the specific word for it in yogic tradition. Kaivalya means isolation from nature. It's not bound into nature anymore. So it's transcended those gunas. It's even transcended balance, because balance always was a doorway back into restlessness and slothfulness. You see, and then you came back to balance, and so you're always going in that cycle, and you get tired of that. Get a little bit of balance for a few days, or for a year, or for even a lifetime, and then you find yourself back in the body, laboring with karmas that you never dealt with in your previous lifetime. Things coming back on you that are unwanted and unexpected. So to put an end to all of this completely, so that his bliss is untarnished and uninterrupted, the luminary, the seer, the yogi, the realized soul, wants to know the workings of the universe on all three levels. That is, peace, 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 right? We say it all the time. On the outside, on the inside, and transcendent. And in order to do that, needs to know all the elements there, tattvas, principles that are there. And pretty much earth, air, fire, water, and ether, which we'll get to here in a minute. And then those same things in their origin, the tanmatras are called, where earth, air, fire, water, and ether came from. and the five senses that enjoy the five elements and the objects that are made up from them, seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, and smelling, knowing those, and knowing also their subtle components, like your senses, your five senses in a dream state tonight, which you still have when these are turned off. That's 20 right there of the 24 cosmic principles, and the other 4 are really just mind, thought, ego, So you have 24 basically that they've given you from the beginning, and coming to know those and memorizing them and studying them and meditating on them and knowing their changing nature, that they are, it's even not even hidden here, but it says, those are all the non-self, you see. That's your final conclusion. Those 24 are the non-self. Those are not myself. And because I believed those were myself is why I've been suffering all this time. Now I take a different tact. I develop a new mind. And I all of a sudden think myself is not of a physical constituency. It's not of a subtle constituency. It's not even my deep sleep state. It's something essential to my being. It is my essential being. And it's one, and it's indivisible, and it's the witness of all these. And that's what the seer realizes, and is able then to come back into the body out of after death, or out of deep sleep, or dream state, in full possession of his unlimited awareness. And be the best worker, if he wants to be, or be the best meditator, be the best seer, in whatever way he wants to express himself, he or she wants to express himself, that soul then is free. So that freedom, again, getting rid of fear by knowledge, and the knowledges of all the workings of the universes, inside and out, both. So, very nicely explained. I just put it more cosmologically, but very nicely explained in Sloka 5, Chapter 4 of Shvetashvatara Upanishad. There is an unborn female of 3 colors. There is a male lying beside her, enjoying her, that is bound by nature. And then there is there is also an unborn male who is near her, but who is not under her auspice anymore, has detached. So we're talking about nature, the soul, and the freed soul, the bound soul and the freed soul, those 3 things. It's a kind of a triputi again. Now, we don't want to relegate Shakti, Divine Mother, to just nature. I mean, she's not only, put it that way, she's not only just a purveyor of substances, producer of substances, like air, earth, fire, water, and ether, and so forth, and their admixtures. She's also the purveyor of divine nature. So there's nature and there's divine nature. So everything that starts at the level of mind and intelligence and sweeps back in towards the Word, that's where she appears as the goddess. That's where she appears as her most conscious manifestation. So that's why I put this chart up, and we can look at that real quick, because San Francisco hasn't seen it yet. We showed it at the mantra seminar recently in Portland, where we did a whole 3-day seminar on the mantra and its import. Come on in and enter. We'll edit that out later. Welcome. So, a 30-second reprise then for those who just arrived. We have been looking at the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, and we were looking specifically at the 4th chapter and the first 7 slokas we read, and in that we talked about the Divine Mother of the Universe, the bound soul, and the free soul. And in order to then explain a little bit more of this inexplicable Divine Mother power, Shakti we're calling it, or Mahashakti, not just at the level of nature, where she's Mother Nature, but at the level of divine nature, where she's Divine Mother Nature. That distinction should be made in her, where from everything from mind inward, as I was saying, intelligence takes over. Great thinkers, great thoughts, and so forth. If you come to the puja tonight, you'll hear beautiful hymn to her that talks about she is the intelligence of the thoughts of the greatest thinkers. You know, that's her essence back there. They don't know about her, but there have these great thoughts are coming up out of her immaculate and infinite wisdom. And so great beings like Sri Ramakrishna would turn and see her and bow to her. You know, she's responsible for everything that comes out of my mouth. He used to say, in Bengal, in Calcutta, at the marketplace, the farmer brings mounds of rice from the countryside and piles it there, and the women and the children of the family bag rice and sell it, you know, at the marketplace, and the heap starts going down over the day. You see a heap of rice. And just when it's about to give out, another wagon load comes from the country, and more rice is poured there. That's what he said. She sits in my throat with this endless supply of wisdom and speaks. All I do is open my mouth. So he took hands off completely from any of owning or knowing any knowledge himself. It was all her doing. And that was his great secret, giving himself 100% over to God, goddess in this case, and therefore being the most full and complete expression of divinity that we have seen recently on this earth. So in that regard, we looked at the Divine Mother as the ultimate reality and form, and also the one who guides us through the doorway into formlessness. They say in the tradition, you know, you dissolve the 5 elements into the 5 senses, and those 10 into the 10 subtle senses, and 10 subtle elements and senses inside of you, and you dissolve those into mind, and those into intelligence, and those into the Word, and then you find the Word inside yourself. Well, that Mother is yourself. You see, she's the purveyor of the Atman. The Atman is she infuses all beings with Atmic power, with consciousness, with awareness, which is a thing in and of itself. It's unoriginated. It doesn't come from anywhere else. Everything comes from it. So that's that stable substratum that's behind everything, out of which everything comes. Not just physically, like matter out of black holes or something, but on all different levels too, back in the kingdoms inside within you. So in that regard then, I put together this chart. We all know the Gayatri mantra, most of us who have come to Vedanta or Yoga or Tantra or any Indian darshan, and know that Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyan Bhargo Devasya Dimohi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. And that is the great Mother mantra, really known and said every day, many times, multiple times by millions of souls. It's abounding in the ethers right now as we're sitting here, just outside of us, and also in the inner ethers. It's going on and on like this great recitation from humanity, from collective consciousness. So I took it apart a little bit here for you, and if live streaming audience is probably looking at it right now, and it says there in the opening sloka, on that adorable splendor of the divine creator may we meditate. May she our thoughts inspire, who is beyond all darkness. He or she, whatever you want to say, make it male or female, or make it genderless, better than all. But if we're talking about Gayatri, usually you're talking about one of the aspects of the goddess, like Saraswati. Now we say Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, right? And you all probably know what that means. Bhur is this world, physical world. Bhur Bhuvaha is the next world, that is lower heaven, you might say. And Swaha is the higher heaven. So you've got 3 levels of division there that they talk about. And so it says here, the supreme, and this is from the Upanishad that we're talking, says here that Tripura Tapini Upanishad was one of the less studied Upanishads. I told you I'd be drawing wisdom slokas from the other 99 Upanishads that we usually don't look into, so I'm beginning to use those in a lot of my charts. Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, then, the supreme, assuming the guise of the Trinity, comes to be styled as the goddess Tripura, or Tripuri. By her power are fashioned the 3 abodes, earth, the atmospheres, and the heavens. So that's Bhur Bhuva Swaha, this outer world, The atmospheres means like a kind of a nether world or an elemental world, it's where people are drawing a lot of their lower visions, I would say, of elementals and spirits that are there floating, as it were, just outside the ken of our senses. And then an inner world, Swaha, which is definitely more into the heavenly realm, more toward the ancestors and more toward the celestial beings. So you have this delineation between the physical and the subtle and the more subtle. The three worlds, they call it. It's a powerful teaching everywhere. You'll find delineations like that in Judaism, you'll find it in Buddhism, you'll find this idea of the divisions of worlds that are back inside. So Christ was talking about that when he said the kingdoms of heaven are within you, or my Father's mansion has many chambers. He's talking about that you don't see, taste, touch, hear, and smell with your gross senses, and is not outside in space, but it's in an inner space, an ether. Akasha was the word they had. We don't have a word for it in English, except heaven. See? So Akasha is, you say that in a circle of spiritual seekers who are know about Vedanta or Tantra or Yoga and so forth, and automatically you'll see they're talking about these subtle Akashas inside, like little Russian dolls placed inside each other. Is one of the charts that I use to illustrate that. Her bijam, hrim, along with its terrible power, permeates the terminus of these three peaks, emanating from the junction between her two eyebrows, which is the seat of equilibrium of the three gunas, and where the world and objects get dissolved. Nice explanation from this Tripura Tapini Upanishad. A little esoteric, but if you've been grounded enough in Vedanta to know, and have recited the Gayatri enough times, then you must know what you're speaking about, you see. And the Upanishad is just coming along to try and flesh it out for you, to make you see, confirm it for you, and help you to make it more a part of your thinking consciousness. So you're not just thinking in terms of the physical universe alone anymore. You're not just a materialist or a body or something like that, you see, but you're now actually thinking in terms of having three worlds back inside of me, at least. Because of course we know there's four more, the seven worlds, and you get into that idea. Because there are worlds where the deities are, and there are worlds where the rishis are, the seers, and there are worlds where the Trinity is. She mentions the Trinity right there. She assumes the guise of the Trinity. The Trinity is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, right? That's why we always sing that beautiful song about it, you see. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Deva Maheshwara, Gurur Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurur Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha. See? So the Trinity is very important. That's her first expression in form. Otherwise, she might as well be a formless goddess that you don't see. Guess what? She's been hiding from us for thousands of years. She very rarely comes forward. There's some slokas in the mother scriptures, like Srimad Devi Bhagavatam and Chandi, are two mother scriptures, which say that the yogis meditate upon her for lifetimes, but they rarely glimpse her, even in their highest meditations. When the gods are really in trouble, like when the Trinity gets in trouble, and there's some particularly nasty asuras coming to take over and turn everything negative in these battles that are cited in the scriptures. All good scriptures have good battles in them. Then the mother steps forward, and Brahma, Lord Brahma, usually the one says, we should remember our Divine Mother. He remembers her first, usually, because he's the one who gets from her the demiurge to create. When everything's in a formless state, then she'll appear to Lord Brahma and wake him up. He'll come out of the lotus. The symbology is Vishnu's laying on bed of snakes, 1,000 snakes, in an ocean of existence, Ekarnava. He's laying there, and then the lotus comes out of his navel, and it opens up, and Lord Brahma is sitting there in the lotus. Thousands and thousands of petals in his lotus mean all the different worlds that are in potential. He could look at that world, or that world, or that world. Some of them are outside, some of them are inside, some of them are way inside, you see. And so he wakes up, as it were, and Divine Mother says, time to do the next cycle of creation. And she gives him the bijam hrim, or other such bijams. And all of a sudden he projects the worlds in space and time. So the worlds are not created out of nothing. They're always in potential in the lotus, and then all it needs to be is activated by the Divine Mother. Sort of like, a laundry pill. Just put it in water, and all of a sudden it starts fizzling, right? Everything, all the cleaning power comes out of it. So she's got everything inside of a concentrated little subtle pill there, and all she needs to do is like put a drop of Brahma on it, and the whole thing just all of a sudden coruscates out. See, all made of light. Everything right on down to this world, you might have noticed, made of light on this nice sunny day in San Francisco. And so that's the symbology of the creation process out of the Trinity. So everything right on down to the dark blue butterfly will come out, as we just read here. You see, thou art the dark blue butterfly and the green parrot with red eyes. Thou art the thunder cloud, the seasons, and the oceans. A very poetic way. So if you look and you just see a butterfly go by and say, how pretty, or if you look at the ocean and say, let's go swim or surf or dive, then you're not seeing the divinity in everything. And guess what? The whole world is not seeing the divinity in everything. If Ramakrishna saw the ocean, he'd go into samadhi, because it reminded him of Divine Mother, the ocean of awareness. In that hymn we'll sing tonight at Puja, it says she's the dominatrix and the overseer of three great oceans, Ananda Sagara and Samsara Sagara, and then the earth ocean. You see, Samsara is the ocean of delusion. Ananda Sagara is the ocean of bliss. So which ocean do you want to be in? You see, and then there's this ocean of matter. It's right here in the middle. You see that's going on. Production of substances, Dravya Shakti. So, looking and seeing Divine Mother Shakti in everything, you don't want to piss her off, you see, as they say. That is, you look and say, oh, look at the ocean, it's just an ocean, and it has no source, it just is. It just came out of nothing. And she's going to get kind of angry. She says, no, that's my ocean. That's me there in the form of water. And you're not seeing me, you see. So nature might just rise up and get a little angry. Next thing you know, there's a tidal wave coming at you, see. And 400,000 people are gone, see. Their chance to see the mother and everything gone in that lifetime, see. So this Divine Mother reality is the protector. She's the substrating behind everything. Like I just said, if Ramakrishna saw her and worshipped her, then all of a sudden he was safe in eternity. That's eternal life. That's why when Christ came along the river and saw the fishermen, oh, you have a nice river here, and you have nets and wives and loaves and fishes, but you don't know the real meaning of nets, loaves, fishes, and water, rivers, oceans. You don't know the real meaning of it. If you did, you'd have an eternal life instead of just an earthly life. You'd be in that ocean of Ananda rather than in that ocean of worldliness, or that ocean of suffering. See, which ocean do you want to be in? It's not a matter of taking a long trek. It's a matter of stop moving. You see, you can't march to the ocean of Ananda. It's in you. And this is the expression of it out here. You're already in it. You have to just become aware of it. That's all. They do that by meditation, by stopping. By stopping what? The heartbeat, the breath, and the thought process. That's how you start. That's what you do when you go to sleep tonight. You slow down the heart, you slow down the breath, and you slow down the mind. And when the mind gets slowed down, what happens? You have deep, powerful dreams, or everything disappears into deep sleep. The great enigma, deep sleep, you see. In India, they thought, how marvelous. There's a time in every person's life, every 24 hours, where they go formless, where they don't think, where they don't breathe, where the heart stops. And that's when they're happiest, by the way. Least worries, least problems, you see. They're in peace. They're in the peace that passes all understanding. You do it every 24 hours. Why don't you do it consciously in your waking state? If you did, that would be mastering the A of Om. If you could bring that light into your waking state. And if you could bring that light into your dreaming state, it would be mastering the U of Om. And if you could see that light in your deep sleep state, it would be mastering the M of Om. And you would be master of the word. And everything that comes flowing out of the world, out of the word, would not perplex you anymore, would not take you away from consciousness, from deeper understanding. It would infuse you with it. Like Vivekananda, walking around the world for 39 years, infused with Om, right? This was his power. When Swami came up to me once at Bellarmine, India, and said, I have your word of power. And he whispered Om into my ear. I didn't know that Swami at all. It just came out of the crowd. Later on, he approached me again and smiled and said, now I have your image of power. And he reached in his robe and gave me this picture of Sri Krishna. I took it and he was gone. So he gave me the word of power and the image of power. You see. Made sure I had those things. So this Divine Mother, so pregnant with force, dynamic force, Shakti. It's a very precious word in our tradition that isn't there in English. Where would you find it? Goddess? Well, they've taken the word goddess and used it for all sorts of things. Nature spirit, demoness, but you can't mistake the word Shakti when you know about it in our tradition. And everyone can, as I just said, and I'll say it a third time, use it for the excuse for why form is there. It doesn't have to be Maya anymore you're looking at. It can be Divine Mother reality. But you have to know her in order for that to happen. Otherwise it is just Maya. And you don't know it. You never know it for your whole life. You'll breathe millions and millions of breaths in and out and never know that she's at the foundation of the breath. You'll have millions and millions of thoughts, low, middling, and high, throughout your whole life and never know that she's at the foundation of your intelligence that's giving you those thoughts. Well, there you see, she permeates the three peaks, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, or outer world, inner world, and subtle world, you see, Bhur Bhuva Swaha. Now, I hope that explains a little bit the first three words of your Gayatri mantra that you say after every meditation. Now, Tat, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha. Oh no, Tat Savitur Varenyan comes next. So Tat needs to be a word taken by itself. You see it here. Is verily the eternal Brahman, the indefinable, impeccable, unconditioned, and unconstrained. It thinks, perceives, evolves, and desires the status of consciousness. Thus it evolves as the visible world. Its desiring is done through the ascetics, mystics and seers and their sacrifices. So when you say, well, I thought Brahman was desireless and so forth, its desires are done through the seers, through the ascetics, and through their sacrifices. They desire for you to be free. They desire for all beings to be free, like they are, you see. They want to share mangoes, not eat them in secret and wipe all traces off their face and then come out and smile at you. See? So they come out and they say, here, I'll share this with you. And so that's God's desire. If God had any desire at all, that's what the Upanishad says it would be. So don't get confused by that. That's a high desire, isn't it? What is desired is born. In truth, Brahman is free of desires. It holds sway over all beings. It puts forth letters like T, A, T, Tat, Therefore, Tat is desireless desire. Whoso knows all of this becomes the Lord. And you see God manifesting through beings who know the meaning of Tat. So, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tat. The first powerful 5 words of the Gayatri mantra, which is Mother's main mantra, you see. It's recited by millions of people. There she is, there, superimposed behind Saraswati, see, the Mother of Wisdom. We will go on, because this is a way of unwrapping this 5th sloka of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad about the one unoriginated female, the bound male lying next to her, enjoying her, and the unbound soul who has freed himself from nature. Those 3 are what we're looking at here, and what happens and how they get free and how they remain bound. Those next words are Savitur Varenyam. The root supreme means to give birth to living beings. Savitur thus gives birth to all that lives. Power gives birth. This primeval power is Tripuri, or Tripura, the supreme sovereign goddess. Great with earrings adorned in sphere of fire, residing, Varenyam means the best, the adorable. Whosoever knows this gains all pervasiveness. So you became the Lord, or the Mother, right, herself, by knowing Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha and Tat. Now, by knowing Savitur Varenyam, you become all pervasive. We ask the question when we grow up, see, especially if we're faced with fundamentalism, for some religions and their fundamentalism. Can a soul really be created? It doesn't make sense to me. How can a soul be created? Actually, how can anything be created? So the great scriptures of India say, you cannot produce something that is unproduced by nature. The very powerful way of thinking. I think maybe rationale and practicality and logic and all that is just, it's kind of dry. But no, you should really look into that. Those are 3 of the 6 proofs of truth. You need to think about that all of this has been produced. If it has been produced, then it must have been unproduced before. See? And there's the rub and the key both in one word. Aparinama, non-transformation. It was pulled out of some unproduced condition and made to look like it was produced. Isn't it? Because if you say it was produced or created, then you must be saying it must have been uncreated and unproduced before. So that must be its nature. I took it away from its true nature. You see how beautiful philosophy is? Non-duality is? Just even one sentence of it. And how it will inspire your thoughts, and all of a sudden you'll never be bored again, you'll never be depressed again, you'll never be restless again, you'll never have fear again, you'll never brood again. All you need to do is call back that one axiom of Advaita Vedanta that nothing can be produced. It's unproduced in its nature. It's free and pure and perfect at all times. And if you take it out of that condition, shame on you. That is, if you take it out of that condition and call it produced, then you've made a great error. If you take it out of that condition and say, oh, Mother is playing, then you're all right, you see. Mother is playing with an unproduced thing and making it appear to be produced. Guess what? I know the secret to Maya now. See? Maya can't flummox me anymore. See? I might as well be illumined at that moment. Moksha has made its way to my door, or I have made my way to moksha's door. Just by a simple sentence like that, coming from study of an Upanishad about a Divine Mother reality, depicted as fully as it can be through a teacher, or any series of teachers, in any given religious tradition. That is a real tradition, you see. There's not a fundamentalist confusion, see, that isn't looking very deep, so you're remaining on the surface of things. So You cannot create something that's uncreate by nature. You cannot produce something that's unproduced by nature. It remains unproduced even when it appears to be produced. And that appearance is what you have to watch out for. Where are you going to store your eggs? In which basket, you see? So this is Savitur Varenyam. She is the creator of uncreate things. She gives them life. How does she give them life? By creating them out of nothing? Sorry, that doesn't make sense. She created them out of consciousness, because consciousness is the unproduced. It is formless. And when it breaks into a form, that's her doing. See? And if the individual soul can buy into it, but if it leaves her out of the equation, it's like saying, I left my true nature back home when I came here. See? I didn't bring it with me. That's the unborn male lying next to her out of attachment for her. It got drug along here out of attachment to nature. But what about this other male who forsakes her after having enjoyed her? He saw through her, you see, through her show. There are songs about it. Divine Mother is flying mind kites in the universe of relativity. See? Every once in a while, one snaps its string and goes free, and she dances and claps her hands. Oh, one of these attached males, you see, who were attached to my show of things, saw through me and flew away. And she's ecstatic at the thought, you see. They gave up their attachment to me like a baby gives up attachment to the breast and grows up and goes away, you see. Matures, we hope. Give up attachment and become free. See? She wants that. So you can't blame Maya, Mahamaya, for keeping you bound, you see. She produced all of this because you wanted it. Air, earth, fire, water, and ether are your desires. That's how Buddha put it. You wanted a place to set your feet, so earth happened. You wanted drinks, water, quench your thirst, swimming, so water happened, you see. It just didn't come out of nowhere. Fire too, you see. Everything, all the 5 elements, she will supply them through Maya for you. But if you come there amidst them and forget that she's the supplier, or just leave your true nature at home, you see. Don't leave home without it, they say, right? It takes on a much greater meaning now, that commercial, you see. Don't leave home without it. What is it? Atman, mother. See? Realization of your true nature. Take it everywhere with you. Be free, be happy, be contented. So, Savitur Varenyam takes on that kind of an atmosphere. Tripura, the supreme goddess, great with earrings adorned, in sphere of fire residing. So she resides in that yogic fire. See, that's her hottest, warmest place. And she's Varenyam, the best of all, adorable. So gain all pervasiveness and know this. Put all these other matters aside. Get thee behind me. Isn't that what he said? Why are you vexing yourself with that? Keep this in mind. Keep this forefront. This is most important. I should never forget this. I should never overlook this. I should never become unconscious of consciousness, non-aware of awareness. Changing God into dog. Keep God first and foremost, sacrosanct. No confusion. You want clarity and you want intensity in order to get that done. The rest of the mantra is Bhargo Devasya Dhimohi, and Da means the highest bearing. Bharga means shining one who dwells at the center, who is imperishable, who is the 4th. That's Turiya, the 4th level of your consciousness. That's beyond Om. AUM is your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, but there's a state beyond that called Samadhi, or superconscious awareness, however you want to put it. True yoga. And so that's the best, of the highest bearing, noble. It is the inmost of all. I'm reading right off the chart. The syllable Ma denotes greatness, inertness, and solidity. Mohi denotes the earth, what is gross, like seas, mountains, islands, and forests. The word Devasya represents the presiding deities. So that's a very pregnant few words there that has both cosmology and spirituality in it. Bhargo Devasya Dimohi is like those Devasyas, those deities who are residing in the atmospheres and who are of noble bearing and who know the inmost and highest consciousness, all said right there in those three words. So when you say a mantra, especially one this powerful, you should try to bring those elements of knowledge into the repetition of that mantra, not just do it like a parrot. You know the story Sri Ramakrishna gave about the parrot. It says hundreds and thousands of mantras all day if he's taught it, but he doesn't get any benefit out of them because he has no awareness to put with it. The householders, they don't do that many mantras, you see. The parrot outstrips them far. But the householder, at the time of his death, may say, "Mother, mother, I give myself up to thee," and recite the mantra. But the parrot just squawks its death squawk when the cat gets a hold of it. So the mantra didn't do anything for it, you see. So you need to bring those shreds of intelligence, those intelligent particles that attend these words, see, to bear with the mantra when you recite it. If you could even just do that once, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, and pause. What did the teaching tell me about that? I remember. Then go on. Tat Savitur Varenyan, and bring all those elements together in one good repetition of it. And you don't have to recite it 108 times a day if you don't want. Just that once with pure attention will bring you much benefit. And do it the same thing the next day or that evening, twice a day, at dusk and at dawn. So that's why the unwrap slokas like that, and why we do it, and why we've been working 2 years on unwrapping every sloka in this Upanishad, so that we can begin to, number one, recognize the immediate potency of the scriptures, the Indian scriptures, the Vedantic scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, the Tantric scriptures, the Yogic scriptures. These are powerful. And they'll hold us in good stead, provide us with a wisdom tradition that we're missing here in this day and age, in this part of the hemisphere, you see. We only have a sort of faith-based tradition, and those faiths sometimes are not based on the unproduced, on the acreate, on the Almighty Father. They're based on all sorts of other levels. So we need these wisdom traditions to come and fill us in. See? And then everything between earth and God will be clear to us. Right now it's just God and earth. You see, and never the twain shall meet. God and mankind are separate. You see, that's dualism. But what happened to Christ when he said, "I and my Father are one"? That all the kingdoms of heaven are within me. Didn't everything just get swept back into him? Didn't he realize that all of this had come out of him, and now it was going back into him, and himself was going back to the Almighty Father? This is dissolution, you see. Shiva's business, you see. Brahma will project, and Vishnu will sustain, but it's time for Shiva to bring it all back. You have to be on board for that. If you're in fear, you're not going to be on board with Shiva. They'll run away from him. Which is why I have so few students. They'll run away from this. They don't want to face it off, you see. Well, I want to keep my paltry little pleasures. I want to keep my attachments to people who actually really don't love me at all. And so forth and so on. So I want to be that unborn male lying by the side of manifested Prakriti and not give her up ever. I want to go to death and be reborn again and again in ignorance. No, be that unborn male who enjoys her and gives her up and can actually do so as many times as he or she wants. Be free to partake and to give up, to attach and detach at will. See, attach when you need to, detach right away so you don't get bound. That pertains to everything, including your body. You're going to want to be able to detach from it when it's time to give it up. Isn't that obvious? Isn't that practical? Vivekananda came and he said, your mothers and fathers probably told you not to think of death, that it was morbid. But I say sit and meditate on death every day. Because the minute you're born, you're rushing towards death. If a great luminary like that says something like that, then probably we should wake up and pay heed, you see. Maybe I should just sit down tonight and dissolve everything in my meditation, even my body. I now am bodiless. I now have no senses. You do that when you fall asleep a few minutes later anyway, so why don't you do it consciously? And I mean, that's really the makeup of a yogi. He does it consciously. When you're just hanging back and not doing it consciously, you're just letting it happen by this unborn female called Prakriti, who takes you into manifest form and takes you into an unmanifested form in deep sleep tonight, and you don't know what's going on. The wool has been pulled over your eyes. What is awakeness? What is consciousness? What is realization? What is illumination? You know, we have to ask those questions and answer them with a definitive answer, and then step up and take responsibility for all that we are suffering, and also win back the ground of our consciousness. See? We can't win it back if we're still holding on to all these physical things and these things that pass all the time. Our hands are full. See, we have to empty. So Shiva will empty. And mantras like this will help you empty. They'll show you the fullness of a thing, and they'll show you how to empty everything that's non-essential out of it. So you just have the essence left. See? It's like boiling milk down to an essence. Everything else gone. You've seen you've got the purest stuff, like ghee, you see. Well, let's finish the mantra then. Dhyoyo naha prachodayat means to meditate upon the Supreme Self, Sadashiva. I already brought Shiva into the picture just now. Who renders us speechless, who inspires our thoughts, and who takes us far beyond the sphere of desire for conceptualization to transcendental reality. Beyond the realm of conceptualization, everything that the mind does. See, it conceives, it desires, it fantasizes, it projects, it creates, or it thinks it does. It takes us far beyond that, Sadashiva, to the realm of transcendental realization. And it looks out then upon the mind and all its antics. The minds of billions of beings and all their antics. Even looks out upon the mind of the Trinity doing the original projection. It's where you can't say I and my Father are one until you find these three fathers, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, which we just sang about, and pay your obeisances to them. Oh, your creation is very beautiful, Brahma. Thanks for preserving it, Lord Vishnu. And thank you for dissolving it, Lord Shiva, because now I know my true nature is formless. And therefore I'll rise up above the Trinity and I'll get samadhi, formless samadhi, which is my true nature, by the way, because that's where all souls become one. That's I and my Father are one is right there. There's not God and I and a bunch of souls anymore. Or put it this way, God, myself, a bunch of souls in nature. That doesn't happen anymore. All of it has been nicely tucked right back into that ultimate little Russian doll, you see. And the Trinity itself has even been transcended. So meditate upon that Supreme Self, Dhyoyo naha prachodayat, who renders us speechless, inspires our thoughts, and who takes us far beyond the sphere of conceptualization. That's called sankalpa and vikalpa. I project things out of my own desire. I should be able to withdraw them too, because if I project them and leave them hanging out there, they become seemingly real and I get attached to them. If I can project them and then withdraw them right back, see, then I have the secret of the freedom of the seers and the yogis. So, in the remaining few minutes of this half, we can think about this entire Gayatri mantra as explained by the Tripura Tapini Upanishad, one of the minor Upanishads, and its beautiful explanation right out of the scripture that I took here. There's another Upanishad, and there's an excerpt from it right here below. It's the Saraswati Rahasya Upanishad. It means Saraswati's own secret. Rahasya means secret. So this goddess, what's her secret? This goddess of wisdom. Without taints I am, being, knowing, loving I am, self-shining, devoid of duality I am. To these words conform. The Devi Saraswati. So this is her own words in her own Upanishad. Remember, the Upanishads contain within them dualistic, qualified non-dualistic, and non-dualistic levels of philosophy. They're known for the Advaita, for the non-dual, but they'll use qualified non-dualism and dualism as aids to help you understand your oneness with the goddess, your oneness with the Father, and so forth. And they'll do it by beautiful poetic methods if necessary. Thou art the blue parrot, the blue butterfly, thou art the green parrot with red eyes, to make you think of the wonder of things, you see. How did such a parrot get created? Where did that butterfly come from? Didn't you feel that way when you were a kid? You see, you had that sort of wonder for everything. Where did that wonder go to as you entered into the arena of life? As you became an adult. Adults being really much more immature than many children. So, to mature is to refine. Is not to become materialistic and fall further and further away from the source. To refine means to come closer. So think about yourself. I am being, I am knowing, I am loving. I am self-radiant, self-effulgent. I have my own light. I don't have to look anywhere else for light. She put it inside of me at the very beginning, at the very beginningless beginning. I am. That's what I am means, right? It doesn't mean I was or I will be. I am is it's the word is asmi. It's a one-word mantra. Asmi. Ask me, and I'll tell you. Asmi. That's the answer. I am. It's so simple and so profound at the same time that even people of very base metaphysical understanding are using it. See? I am, I am, I am. See? So if you understand its profundities and you see where it came from, the goddess herself, then it becomes even all the more effective towards bringing you towards that state of realization. The realization that is ever now, is ever in the moment. Never was, will be, or any other mode. It's always immediate, you see. And so your consciousness must be immediate to recognize it. And once it recognizes it, it will stay immediate. It won't waver anymore. Like a candle in a windless place. See? That's the mind of a yogi. And meditates deep on Mother. There she is with her swan. That's him. You see, that's the great seer, the white swan, the Paramahamsa. See, the pure soul, playing the music of the universe with her veena. See, and holding the japamala and the scripture, you see. She holds the japamala and the scripture both in two of her upper hands. So she has all that significance for you, just even in her mere visage. What to speak of what's inside of her secrets. So this is how we start out our first half of our Saturday class on the Shvetashvatara Upanishad as we move towards puja and Divine Mother worship of Navaratri. And we will come back then in about 15 minutes to take up the rest of these first 7 slokas. We'll make a big bite today out of chapter 4, and hopefully a well-digested bite and a tasty bite. So let's break here for 15 minutes and refresh ourselves with water and exercise and breathing. Breathing's always good. And come back and take up the subject again for another hour. Namaste. Welcome back to the second half of our class on the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. I hope you all hung with it in the first half, and that whole description of the Gayatri mantra as was evinced by that fifth sloka about the female of three colors, with three colors, and the two males one lying by her side and one free. Very good symbology, but it shows that the Upanishad is full of imagery, symbology, practical teachings, and non-dual statements, which are the more abstruse ones, and also poetry, beautiful poetry and prose that work its way in there. The unique scriptures of India, one of the prasthanatrayam, they say, three landmarks of scriptural history are Brahma Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, and Upanishads. Upanishads is a collection of 108, which is also, as we say here, the 108 beads on the mantra, on the mala, on the beads. So there's a lot of 108 significances in that number. So as we come back into the flow of chapter 4, we've taken a bite of 7 slokas, which I read out loud to you. And the first two we want to go back to and look at, especially this one that I mentioned about fire. The fire of Shakti and everything from that on down to the fire of our suffering, which is a kind of painful burning that happens, and the intensity of spiritual efforts, which is a kind of burning away of impurities, or the fire of purification, you would call it. There are all sorts of levels of fire which the Vedas and the Upanishads and other teachings, these scriptures of India, bring out for us so that we can meditate on fire. So you can see already that if you say, well, I'm going to meditate on fire, and you're just meditating on the campfire or your fireplace or a candle in a windowless place, those are all manifestations of fire. But you could then, say, be an astronomer and meditate on the billions of suns in the night sky. They recently discovered a sun, evidently, that is so big that it take you 1,100 centuries to fly around at the speed of today's jet, evidently. Imagine that. Not a few days or a few years or a few centuries, over a millennia to fly around it. So that's a huge landmass. Mm-hmm. So you could take that, there's billions of suns in the sky, and go into awe and wonder about that, almost overwhelm in the infinity of the physical universe alone. But then when you start looking into the spiritual universes, and fire takes on a whole different implication. So I wanted to show you that on this chart here, which is probably up for the live streaming audience now. You can see there the significance of fire in Vedic religion and philosophy. I'm coming off of this second sloka, I'll read it for you, of the chapter 4. That itself, meaning Brahman, is the fire. That is the sun. That is the air. That is the moon. That is also the starry firmament. That is Brahman, that is the waters, and that is Prajapati. Prajapati is the teacher of the gods. There is a human who is so enlightened that it can actually teach the gods. So it points to that fact that in our tradition the human being is higher than the gods, higher than the heavens. So the human being is not a fixed station. The gods are fixed for not just millennia, but yugas in one position in their atmosphere, in their inner atmosphere. But the human being has the ability to, of course, stay bound, we know, but it has the ability to get free and even transcend the Trinity, as we were talking about in the first half of our class. It can even go beyond and get into a formless state and have samadhi like Buddha and Jesus and others did. So that means the human being is an incredibly unique personage in the universe. And so there's they're called the Prajapati, that is the teacher of the gods. You read about Prajapati in the Upanishads, you'll find out what a unique soul that was. He goes to the highest heavens and teaches the gods how to transcend their desire for lordship, that kind of thing, because the gods have desires too. So all of that starts out with that itself is the fire. So that's where I'm coming from when I present this chart. You see this is right out of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, an earlier sloka, the sloka, the Upanishad we're studying today, this is an earlier sloka. First harnessing the mind and the senses with a view to realize the truth, and then having found out the meaning of the light of fire, the evolving soul brought itself out of the earth. So this is a qualified non-dual statement because the soul doesn't evolve. Vedanta has already told you that. If you're talking about soul with a capital S, what we call Atman, that does not evolve. It's back to this idea of produced and unproduced. You cannot produce a soul. It was always there beyond time. And time means beginning, middles, and ends. So it's an eternal verity. It's not something that comes into being and leaves being. You have to think of your soul that way. It's eternal. Read my lips. That word is the one good word in English we have, you see. Oh, eternal. Infinite is another one. So if you apply those to your thinking process, to the highest Brahman, then you'll understand what formless reality is, who the Almighty Father is, really, who this Divine Mother Shakti is. Then you'll have words to, that's why they called her, Savitur Varenyan, the most noble, the greatest bearing, the eternal one. So that, when they mentioned here the soul brought the soul out of the earth, doesn't it go back to this fifth, or forward to this fifth sloka that says there's an unborn male lying by the side of this goddess who is attached to her, can't let her go, nature, see. So there's the evolving soul. He thinks he's bound. He thinks he's born. He thinks he dies. But then he doesn't have control of that, or know of that Shiva power yet. That's why they sing songs like that. Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Shiva. Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Shiva. Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Sada Shiva, Samba Shiva. And then it has a bunch of verses that go after that. That's the chorus, as we say. So Samba Sada Shiva, we had that word, Sada Shiva, in correlation with our Gayatri mantra. So to know that non-dual Shiva, that destroyer, that dissolver, that one who takes everything back in, the power of dissolution, is very important to everything we do. Waking, dreaming, eat, sleep, life, birth, life, and death. We have to know that dissolving power, because we can't just say, oh, we're born and then we get 100 years here, or 50 or 80 years here, and we're scot-free, right? No, we're headed towards another apparent ending, a dissolution. And inside of those 50, 80, 100 years we live, every 24 hours we're going to a dissolution. Right? So you cannot escape the power of dissolution. And when you start to practice meditation, that is a dissolution. You may think, I'm going to get healed by meditation, or I'm going to get enlightened by meditation, or I'm using meditation for whatever purpose. But what you're actually doing is just taking everything away. It's a natural renunciation. Even the householder can't renounce the world like the monk does. So his form of renunciation is just to sit and meditate at the end of the day. Get rid of his children, get rid of his job, get rid of his boss, get rid of his worries, get rid of everything. And that he has to do inside our meditation. And he comes to favor it. This is the time for me. This is my hour of God. This is where my Father and I can become one, even inside of my 24-hour life. I must hold it sacrosanct. I must keep it going throughout my life. Twice a day would be better, dawn and dusk. So that dissolution power, very important. So we sing about Shiva in that regard, part of the Trinity. And Shiva really is very much that fire. You might say Lord Brahma is the fire of creation, but Shiva would be that fire of destruction or dissolution. He's known for that. So that one sentence there, first harnessing the mind and senses with a view to realize the truth. It means they brought the mind and senses together in an effort to realize the truth, not in an effort to enjoy nature, not in an effort to possess objects, which are not possessible in the end anyway, seek thee first the kingdom and so forth, and not in an effort to enjoy a life of mere 80 or 100 years and then just go to an end of some kind, but in order to bring the soul out of its attachment to earth. So this whole chapter here, especially the opening, is really about man seeing himself beyond nature. I mean, knowing himself beyond nature, but once he knows it, then in order to know it, he's going to have to actually go through the process of retracting himself from all the things he's associated with. And actually that's a good way of comparing. You can identify with something, but then you can just associate with it. If you identify with it, you're up a creek without a paddle most often. But if you just associate with it and then give it up and associate with it and you become masterful at doing that, then you find this happiness and this contentment and this peace of mind come along. Those might as well be fires too. You get the fire of happiness, the fire of contentment, and then you get the fire of peace. You might even call them waters. But in terms of fire, they're really transformative. So this whole sloka then, very pregnant, having found out the meaning of the light of fire. It's a three-part teaching. First, harness the mind and senses to realize the truth, then find out the meaning of the light of fire. I was just saying, candle flame, lava, sun god, on one side. Other side, fire of prana, ojas, which means spiritual energy, tejas, which means transforming power, and awareness itself, all in Brahman. You see, all flowing out of Brahman. Each of these flames of the fire of Brahman, stepping down right to the very planets themselves, right to the very sun. So you can take this physical sun and you can say, that's a good metaphor for self-effulgence. Right? I should be like that. I should always keep my light. I shouldn't borrow it like a moon, because the moon's going to be plunged into darkness every 24 hours. So I should keep the light of the sun. So that's the first level of understanding of sun. You use it metaphorically. Then you take it and you meditate on the sun god itself, Surya. The collection of 1,000,000 suns in the night sky gives you the idea of some presiding entity out of which all this fire comes from. See? And the Upanishad gives you permission to go ahead and think of Brahman as the fire itself. That itself is the fire. Fire of creation, fire of destruction. Might as well be fire of preservation too, so you can, warm yourself during this period of life in a cold, heartless universe. You see, out there in space, it's cold and heartless, isn't it? And empty and vacant. You see, mostly just blackness. But here on Earth, there's a sun. You see, there's a planet that's near to the sun, and we have a certain cycle in which we can enjoy the warmth of the sun without getting too near it or being too far from it. And we can enjoy the warmth of camaraderie with our brothers and sisters and the warmth of teachings with the Guru. Dharma teachings is a kind of fire, transforming fire. Ojas and Tejas is all about that. So understanding the meaning of the light of fire is different than just saying, oh, it's a nice day out today. Look at the sun. And you say that for all the days of your life, but you never know the meaning of the sun, the meaning of the 1,000,000,000 suns in the sky. Or the sun's back inside your dream tonight, how you had a sun there too. S-U-N we're talking. So all of that is spiritual in nature. It's subtle. People won't go towards it because they only believe in the gross. Gross meaning rivers, planets, trees, forests, as we said here. Tat savitur varenyo bargo devasya. You see, it means really the beings there. You see, the sun, the forests, the oceans, all beautiful, aren't they? Infinite, pure. We hope we can keep them pure. Pure forests, pure water. We don't want to pollute them and so forth. But actually, that's part of the teaching, is that they can be polluted. It's not just that we're to blame for polluting them, that the very thought that they can be polluted should probably tell us to get some detachment around them. If this earth explodes, they're billions of other Earths out there in which life could possibly manifest itself on, if it hasn't already. I don't happen to believe that it has, but this particular Earth is therefore, basking in the sunlight. And that sunlight, as the seer looks at it, is intelligence. It's not just warming light of vitality, out of which seeds can sprout and trees can grow and water can sparkle and so forth. It's the light of intelligence. So if you trace the sun's real meaning, you understand the real meaning of the light of fire. It's intelligence that you're looking at. It's pure intelligence shining with a power that's far beyond the power of a billion suns. It's inward, it's subtle. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a small germ can kill a powerful elephant. So he knows that the smallest things are the most powerful things in the universe, not the grandest. The grandest are the most impressive. Oh, we're very impressed down here, we can tell you see. Oh God, we're so amazed by your splendor and glory. Get over it. You see. God doesn't want you to be amazed by all that. He wants you to know the subtle inner meanings of things, the fine workings of things, the kingdoms of heaven within you. Do you hear Christ talking about the beauty of the manifest universe outside? Oh, birds have nests, foxes have holes, but you have no place to lay your head here. Didn't he say? So if you're a Christian, how can you wiggle out of this philosophically? He wanted you to know the kingdoms of heaven within. And John, if you don't know those, go to Gethsemane and start meditating on them, because basically you need to know the Word out of which all this sprang. The Word is like the power of a billion suns gathered together. The whole train of this came out of the Word. In the beginning was the Word. Sun gods came out of the Word. That's a subtle thing. So you must develop a taste for the subtle in spiritual life. If you're to believe in it, what to speak of begin to understand it, what to speak of realize it, like the seers have. It's got to be your particular penchant, you see. I'm very keen to realize the meaning of the light of fire and trace it all the way back to its Vedic root, if need be. So that's part of the, I've already jumped into explaining the whole diagram right there. You can see it in kind of a nutshell. It's the goddess herself of fire. And there you see the 5 ways by which she produces things. Dravya Shakti. Earth, water, fire or light, air, and ether. Those are the 5 Pancha Maha Bhutas, they're called. Pancha means 5, Maha means great, 5 Bhutas mean elements. They're the 5 great elements. Everyone uses them. You see, philosophy uses them, but she uses them to produce substances. If you look into any object, it's a combination of those 5. A little water in this, very little. I could squeeze it all day and I wouldn't probably get much drops out of it. But there's a little water here, and there's quite a lot of earth, wood, you see. And there's a lot of air shooting through these pages, and earth and ether permeates it, you see. It is space itself, really. And there's fire there too, isn't there? You can light it. I'll show you. Give me a match. So all 5 elements are here in a quintuplication process in different variegations. More fire, less water, more air, less, the whole thing like that. All objects are made of those 5. So the way she uses the Pancha Mahabhutas is to create substances. And she knows that they've come out of the thought fire, the thought air, the thought water, the thought earth. It's all intelligence to her. And she can, and her Prakriti, this goddess that lies there with 2 males on either side of her, she knows how to solidify things, to make things dreamlike seem earthly, seem solid. It's the solidifying power in her, ability to do that. And guess what? You have that too. You and all of your human fellows have solidified this earth. Like Buddha said, the 5 elements are your 5 desires. You all got together and decided, we're hungry, we're thirsty, we want warmth, we want to breathe. And we need a space to do it in. So we all got together and produced, with the 5 elements, this world. And we came here, into the fetus, through our parents, all by the act of consciousness, you see. Some of us were good choosers, some of us weren't. Some of us chose good parents, some of us didn't. And an admixture of the two, you see, going on all the time. It was all done out of consciousness, all done out of intelligence, all done out of premeditated acts. Some cases of some it was thought, thinking aforethought, you see. In others it was malice aforethought. I want to come here and wreak havoc, you see. So there's all sorts of reasons in which people projected and solidified this with their 5 great desires, or the 5 elements. So a way of explaining it that is non-conventional. Other people just came here and say, oh, I was born, I have a body, I have 5 senses, there's some objects out there, I'm going to enjoy them, or I'm going to suffer by them. End of story, you see. No meaning whatsoever to it. It's all like haphazard, random, serendipitous. No knowledge of forethought at all. Completely bereft of that. But what about all these hundreds and thousands of seers that are doing this consciously, who know the process, who have come out with these beautiful systems, who have written these beautiful Upanishads? That's all out of intelligence, you see. They know intelligence. They know it's the, as Vivekananda said, the first compound. That's how he described intelligence. It's the first compound of any compound there is. It's the compound of the word in the Trinity, you might say. Bring that together and you've got knowledge, intelligence. Shining like a sun, shining like a billion suns. Your thought, your very thought process is made of particles, just like these elements are made of physical particles. Your thought process is made of intelligent particles. And if you can bring them all together and focus them, your third eye opens. If thine eye be single, you shall know the truth. So, what about that? You see, I need to learn how to focus those. You know, what kind of magnetic power can I create to bring all those intelligent particles together in my mind, so that that will happen? Probably should try concentrating and meditating. It's called the 6th and 7th limb of yoga. I have the tree of yoga right here in one of these charts. So I'm emphasizing that section of this chart, and then bring itself out of the earth. When you have that kind of thing, then you don't have to be earthbound anymore. You can even come to earth and not be earthbound. That's really the Jivan Mukta, you see. He's a living, liberated soul. He comes into the body by way of association, by choice, like an avatar, descends on purpose, for the express purpose of helping others, and gives it up, right in the sight of millions of people. Just as easy as that. It doesn't matter whether he's poisoned or crucified or dies of cancer, nothing to him. The body is just an add-on to the soul. Nature is there all the time. I can produce a body anytime I want out of it. That's because my Divine Mother of the Universe is always open. She doesn't close. She's not just 9 to 5, she's 24/7. She's all 4 yugas open. So this is worth knowing then, that we can actually bring the earthbound soul out of its condition, and that we should. In fact, Ramakrishna said that's the purpose of life. There is no other purpose of life than to realize God. This is the way he put it. Are there secondary purposes and so forth? Yes, but you have to put the 1 in front of the zeros in order for there to be a number. See, you have to seek thee first the kingdom of heaven first, before everything else can be added unto thee. So that's the only purpose for life, isn't it? If you take that away, then life is purposeless. And you just go from birth to death, and death to birth to soul. Dragged from birth to death, and death to birth to soul, as Swamiji says. So with that diagram, chart, the Divine Mother, the 5 elements, and this chart, then we can look at kind of the way that fire works in us. This diagram below that I've put together, it starts with the fire of suffering. So we were talking just yesterday, actually, about pleasure and suffering. How people, I forget how it came about, but we had an interesting way of saying it last night at satsang. There were only 3 of us there this week for satsang, but we went ahead with it anyway. And we were talking about how people come to the teacher or to the therapist or to anyone who wants to help others. You see, they come to them and they sit there and they say, I had bad upbringing. My parents were not good to me. I was raised in poverty. I have emotional problems. I was beaten as a child. A whole host of things will come forth out of them. But do we ever hear anyone come and sit in front of a therapist or a guru and say, I had a great childhood. Everything was given to me. I've enjoyed all my life. We would never hear that, do we? Except in the case of that exceptional soul who comes and sits, I have everything I want, but I'm not happy yet. We hear that once in a while from a very rare soul. I have everything I've ever wanted. I have knowledge, I have property, I have relationships. Everything worked out for me great in my life. I don't have any complaints, but I'm still not happy. So teach me that one thing by which knowing all else is known, because I don't know that one thing yet. I don't have the one in front of the zeros. I've found out that all my knowledge and all my possessions and all my experiences have added up like a bunch of zeros to nothing. I need to put a 1 in front of them. There needs to be meaning to all this. Otherwise it just ends in death. I just lived a happy animal life. I'm a happy animal, you see. But what about Prajapati, who goes to teach the gods? How did he transcend pasu, animal nature? How did he even transcend virya, heroic nature? Those are types of fires. So when you're in pasu, you're animalistic. Your last lifetime was animalistic. Your lifetime before that was animalistic. You were just attached to the 5 elements and the objects and the senses. That's all you knew. Your parents brought you up that way. They were attached to the 5 elements. They were that male lying beside the female who was attached to her. They were attached to nature. That's all they knew. So they began to march their way out of that by the fire of suffering, not by the fire of pleasure. There's no such thing as the fire of pleasure. There's the hypnotism of pleasure. So through ignoble whips of pain, man is driven towards God, whose beauty alone should draw him. The one saying, should have been drawn to God by God's beauty. Like I said earlier in the first half, all of this should say to you, not this is my oyster. It should say to you, there's a great meaning behind this. I feel the divinity in everything. See? And that should compel you. But no, alas, not. See? Instead, I have to go through this routine, this rounds of suffering, in order to prove to myself, in order to get some impetus to get me out. You light a fire under me, I might move, you see. Isn't it? So some people need fires lit under them. And if they've been good workers, and they've made money, and they've been successful in the world, they still come back to us and say, I'm not happy. I have everything happy. Was Napoleon happy? Was Alexander the Great happy? Was Attila the Hun happy? I don't think so. They wanted more, more, more. Selfish grasping, the Buddhists say. It's all about selfish grasping, taking to the self. But the scriptures say the yogi finds much, much more pleasure in giving away than taking to the self. The more he can give away, the better he feels. Not only because he's giving away selflessly to people who need things, but because he's making himself bereft of all things that could cause him attachment. See? Anything that might cause him attachment that would take away his yogic equipoise, he's getting rid of day by day as it accumulates. Do not store up for the future. That's how Ramakrishna put it. Of course, if you're a householder, you're going to need to store up a little. to raise a family and so forth. But then you're going to have to do that carefully. So fire of suffering, a great teaching, really. Everything starts there. For anyone who's starting out on a path, they're going to need to suffer. Sort of rule of thumb. And guess what? Can any of you tell me the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism? Or even the first one? It's 2 words. Suffering is. That's how Buddha put it when he came back from his experience of nirvana. Suffering is. That's the first thing you need to know. And if you're a Buddhist, if you don't accept that, then you can't be a Buddhist. You're a pseudo-Buddhist. You think you're a Buddhist, but you're not. How did Holy Mother put that? The suffering of this world has gotten into the very marrow of my bones. May you never be born here again. She put it very starkly, this beautiful, compassionate Mother Sharda of ours. She didn't want you here in suffering. If you were here in awareness and consciousness and so forth, fine. She said, you're a warrior. So the Pasu is here in the fire of suffering, but the minute he starts to get the fire of aspiration, turns into a warrior. That's a different way of living. That person can forbear. So how good are you at forbearance? They say the default zone of the wise is forbearance. The wise know God is real and the world's not. But they still have their prarabdha karma here. They still have to keep up their body for a while. When they go to death, they'll go to a realized state. But they still have some years left here. So how do they handle that? Forbearance. You see them sitting around waiting, like a pot that's already been perfected on the wheel, but the wheel keeps spinning. They don't have any more perfection to go through. No angles, angularities, you see. But the wheel still is spinning, so they still have to work out the rest of their life. How do they do it? By forbearance. Because you can't have nirvikalpa samadhi all the time, or you wouldn't be here. That's like a moth flying into a fire. It doesn't come back. Hailstone falling into an ocean, it doesn't recrystallize. That's how the seers have put it, through their experience. Don't just take my word for it, or hearsay, but that's how the seers have put it in their scriptures. Their direct experience. So you move from the fire of suffering, kind of pasu-like, animalistic, to the fire of aspiration, which is heroic. Your thoughts are beginning to aspire. There's an energy that takes your thoughts up. There's an energy that distributes your nutrients throughout to the organs, to the blood, right? There's an energy of breathing, in and out. Those are called pranas. There's an all-pervasive energy that's in everything. So there are 5 pranas, actually 1 prana in 5 forms. The yogi gets a hold of that prana that's upward moving, like the inward breath. Everyone feels how great it is to take in an air of breath, a lungful of breath, you see. So it's like that feeling. Aspiration is like that swelling of the chest, meaning of air. Not just, the nice warm sunny day, or the breath, the lungful of breath ascends, you see, like a triangle going up. 2 paths meeting at the apex. So all of a sudden you feel that aspiration, and you get a hold of that energy and you master it. And like I said, no depression for me, no brooding for me, no suffering for me that I can't forbear, and so forth and so on. Now if you move from fire of aspiration in this trajectory, fire of worship comes next, because once you get the fire of aspiration under your belt, then your thoughts have reached a sort of satisfaction. They're contented inspiration, if you want to call it. So all of a sudden you see the divine energy everywhere. One of the slokas in this Upanishad states that. Te dhyan yoga nugata apasyan devatma shaktim swagunair nagudam yaha karanani nikilani tani kalatma yuktanya adidishtat yekaha. That's one of the slokas earlier. It says, through the art of meditation, the rishis saw the divine energy in everything. Devatma Shakti. There's that word, Shakti, you see. They saw the divine energy and everything through their power of meditation. That is, they went into meditation, they saw it inside, no doubt. But when they came out here, marvelous, marvelous. They saw it out here too, only it was just congealed. They had to strip off some coverings, you see, to look and see the real meaning of the thing, and not get swept away by the hypnotism part of it. So, that fire of worship is the result of this. All of a sudden they feel very worshipful to everything, to other beings, so you'll find that they're treating you very nicely most of the time, and doing what is best for you, for your highest good. You'll find them treating nature with respect. Their mastery of nature is not domination over nature, to use it for their pleasures or to dominate other races and so forth. They're very respectful of resources and objects. Once Holy Mother saw someone sweeping the ashram with a broom, and when he was done, he threw it away, you see, threw it down. And she said, no, my son, don't do that. The broom may be dirty, but it cleans dirty places. Respect it. And she picked the broom up and put it in its closet, you see, its little place. So they look at everything. Everything has to be in its proper place and respected and for what it is, see, because isn't it your own intelligence? I mean, if you've already found that out, then are you going to diss your own intelligence? That's what atheists and agnostics and materialists are doing. They're really pretty much just insulting themselves. Their own consciousness, from which everything came, and which they do not know yet. They're still in an animalistic condition. Their highest pleasure, their highest aspiration is pleasure. But when real aspiration starts burning as fire, then you start to feel like you want to worship everything. The sun, the moon, the stars, beings, gods, goddesses. There's no limit to that worship. If you're seeing God in everything and everywhere, then you're there, you see. You're in the devotional yoga. And it's been based on knowing, the knowledge yoga. Knowledge got rid of your ignorance so you could love properly. So it's an old combination set in stone. You can't love things until you know them, and you can't know them until you get rid of your ignorance and fear around them. That's why relationships aren't lasting. That's why people who are getting divorces, you see, or going to marriage counselors and so forth. Their own ignorance. You might as well just sit in front of the marriage counselor, and the marriage counselor, if they were a spiritual one, would say, get rid of each of your own ignorance and you'll be fine. Each go, get rid of your ignorance and get back together. I bet you won't have any problems then, because the fire of aspiration is going to start burning in you. And you'll find out that the husband and wife are two spokes to the same wheel, and that wheel should be rolling in the direction of God realization. You're getting on the same page, you're walking the same path. And guess what? Everything is working fine. It's called a dharmic couple. There are some. Dharmic couples sometimes even turn into yogic couples. Very powerful couples in the world that are doing great change to the world, great positive change to the world, and nobody even knows it. Another secret of Saraswati Rahasya. So from fire of worship, is there anywhere to go? Yes, complete transformation. You've been worshiping objects, you've been worshiping everything that you see. Now you want to worship the one in those things. External worship has that one drawback to it, that it can keep you in a dual position, or maybe a qualified dualistic position. But you have this intense yearning. It's like the fire of yearning to all of a sudden worship the one source of everything. You really want to come to that one source, like a mountain climber wants to get to the highest, the last rise, you see, and get to the tip of the mountain. Or you want to find the source of that underwater spring. It's that desire to find the source. So that's called the fire of transformation, and it's accomplished by the fire of yoga. The two really go together. If we say transformation, and we're talking about fire on this side of the spectrum, ojas and tejas, you see. That's ojas means if I eat food, but man does not live by bread alone, then I take my food and I do something else with it than most people do. You know what happens to food. We don't need to go into the digestive process of the human body. But if I take my food, and man does not live by bread alone, and I start to take it up the spine, how do I do that? By praying over it, by saying this sacred mantra over it, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam. I start praying over the food, you see. Then all of a sudden food has meaning, and food's energy gets directed upward, and then I take it into my spiritual practice, and it turns into ojas. That's what the yogis say, ojas. I call it spiritual orange juice. See? And it's organic too. It's not frozen. It's got all the nutrients that were there originally in it. And then the teachers use that, turn it into tejas. That's what you're getting when you're sitting here in a class. You're getting tejas. The light in the sun in the sky today gives you warmth, but the Guru should be giving you spiritual warmth and succor. Should be melting away the iceberg of your ignorance, or any sort of coldness that's gathered from your work week, or your work day, or your life, stages of life, you see. You go back to that source to get warmed up. It's just like a bonfire in the Arctic. It's the best analogy I ever heard. Man's freezing cold. You know, all of a sudden comes over the rise. There's a bonfire down there in the valley. He runs into it and runs up to it. And as he warms himself up, he's in pain, you see, because the numbness is going away and his skin is prickling. You've had that sensation? So that's the death of ignorance, metaphorically speaking. And then you get nice and warm, you see. You might start taking off clothing. See? Oh, I'm going to renounce that piece, I'm going to renounce that piece. So, you know, this is how you're getting from the fire of worship to the fire of transformation, and using that fire of yoga. You want to get as close as you can to that bonfire of pure spiritual potential through ojas and tejas. And of course that's just going to lead you to pure awareness. There's her sword. You see, it's right at the tip of her sword. It's that stroke that cuts away all ignorance. From there's the fire of Shakti, which is what we've been talking about the whole time, connected to light, connected to fire, connected to Brahman. It's right up the middle of the thing. It's the dynamic power of Brahman. Like fire and its heat. You can't separate the two. So this chart has one sloka at the bottom we haven't seen yet. Says, salutations to that divinity who is in fire, who is in water, who is in plants, who is in trees, and who has pervaded the entire universe. So then we are pointing more towards the absolute Brahman. When we say all-pervasiveness, well, fire is fairly pervasive because it's existing as potential to burn in this book, you see. But that's a teaching, you see, potential to burn. That means you have some inner knowledge about the workings of fire on a physical level. But as when they say it's in everything, water, ether, trees, people, then you're talking about an all-pervasive presence. Vyapti, vyapaka, you know, it's like it means all-pervasive presence that doesn't have to move because it's already there. So now all of a sudden I'm coming to this realization of the immovable. That's beautiful, you see. I should be immovable myself to realize that. If I'm sitting in meditation, I shift, you know, then I'm not like Brahman. So I have to sit there for an hour unmoving, don't I? Give my, you know, the mind is like this huge mud puddle that someone stuck a stick in and stirred. So will that mud puddle, will the silt settle in 24 hours? Probably not. I'm probably going to have to wait a week for that silt to settle so that everything becomes clear. So that metaphorically means I need to meditate for more than an hour. I need to meditate maybe 2 hours, or maybe an hour twice a day, or maybe go to a retreat and meditate 8 hours a day like the Buddhists do. See, for 3 weeks in a row. Because the silt will really settle then, and I'll have clear mind, khyati. I've never had clear mind before, you see. So I must get it. I don't know what it is like to experience mind that's in a pure state. Free of thoughts, free of brooding, free of depression. Free of all dross, like gold purified, you see. So people don't know what that's like. They have to come to feel it once, and that really will give them that inspiration and that aspiration. That's what's going to light your tinder on fire, and you'll start burning. Finally, you'll be on fire. Founder of SRV Associations, my dear friend and colleague and Upaguru Lex Hickson, used to take me different places, and whenever we go to these different sanghas, Sufi, Buddhist, Vedantic, and so forth, he'd look at a group and say, that one's on fire, that one's on fire, oh, that one over there is on fire, everyone else is still sleeping. Like, he could come to know just by looking at people who is under this fire, transformative fire going on, see? Because they had this faraway look in their eyes, they had this intensity to them, they had this taste of divine reality, and it wasn't letting them sleep. That grain of sand had been put in their bed and they couldn't get comfortable. See? Always squirming at night. That was not rajas. That was not a worldly restlessness. That was a spiritual restlessness. They used to look at Vivekananda and say, he teaches how to get beyond restlessness, but he's so restless himself. And then they came to understand that he had the fire of yoga in him, that he was burning across the world in 39 years. He was burning out. He used to say that, I would rather burn out than rust out. That was his saying. So he had the fire of yoga. Another time he said, here in the Himalayas, I can sit with a scripture in the snow and be perfectly free of all disease. I have the fire of yoga. That was his possession, the fire of yoga. So that's how important that is, and it's how it makes one feel. Conveys maybe a little bit of feeling of what that makes it, that makes the human mind go to in this aspiration process. It's got this intensity to it. It's always running towards the goal. It's not going to be satisfied with anything short of the goal. Might be able to stop and rest once in a while, but you never quit, as they say. Well, that chart then, given to us by the beautiful slokas of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, that's looking back in the first three chapters and bringing out some of the slokas that were there. Now, the next two slokas were the poetic ones. I don't have any chart necessarily to put with those. Thou art the woman, thou art the man, thou art the youth and the maiden. Thou art the old man who totters along, leaning on the staff. Thou art born with faces turned in all directions. Thou art the dark blue butterfly, the green parrot with red eyes. That's a strange combination, huh? You ever look at a parrot, kind of get sort of hypnotized by that bird, see? Beautiful, beautiful, big green parrot with red eyes. It's like God sitting there in front of you. Thou art the thundercloud, the seasons and the oceans. Thou art without beginning and beyond all time and space. There, we could show a glimpse of this cause and effect chart. If you want to know, here's the material cause of things. That is basically you have earth, air, fire, water, and ether, 5 senses, and physical body. The egg, the sperm, the vital energy that infuses everything, and food. That's pretty much a composite of the physical universe and how things, cause and effect-wise, go on here. It's a combination of matter and mind, isn't it? Intelligence doesn't necessarily need to visit. There are a lot of people who have not realized higher intelligence in this yet. There's a lot of people who are intellectually intelligent who still don't have the idea that there's much beyond this. Other material cause efficient cause, primordial cause, subtle cause, cosmic cause, remote cause called Om, and the causeless cause is all inside as a sweep. Kingdoms of heaven within you, leading up to very, very subtle things like the Mahashakti herself. See, there she is at the head of it. So, tears. T-I-E-R-S. It's only T-E-A-R-S if you don't realize it. But if you see these other levels of cause and effect, it's tears, different echelons, different levels of consciousness marching inward. Like I said, if you're a Christian, you have to look into this. Christ saw it within him, and he mentioned it and talked about it. And it was one of the things that was important. Since it didn't get concentrated on very deeply, then we have this lack of cosmology in the West. In fact, we're going around destroying the cosmology of other nations because we don't have any respect for cosmology. So cosmology first, then philosophy, and then spirituality is how the inward march happens. You have to know what a thing is in order for you to know what you're not. I am not that. Earth, air, fire, water, and ether. I am not the five senses. I am not the objects. I am not the ancestors. This is the realization of Buddha and Christ and others in meditation. I'm not the ancestors. I want free of the ancestors, because the ancestors are hooked into nature and they're coming back again and again into nature. I want free of that ground. I don't want to go just to heaven. See, my teacher used to say that all the time. I don't care for a post-mortem emancipation. Freedom is now, and I want it now. It's always now. It's not something you can put off to the future like some distant heaven. And in fact, if you're looking outside and saying, well, there's the star I'm going to after I die, that's complete delusion. You should be looking inside to try and find out what planet, what sun, what loka, what akasha you're going to be visiting based on your lifetime you lived now. Have I spent my whole lifetime worshiping my ancestors? I'll probably be going to my ancestors then. Have I spent my whole lifetime worshiping the gods or the goddesses? Then I'll probably be going to the realm of the gods and goddesses after I die. Have I spent my whole lifetime worshiping Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji and Holy Mother, or Jesus or Buddha? Then I'm probably going to that highest land called the realm of the realized souls. What am I meditating on? Am I meditating on earth, air, fire, water, and ether? Then I could either be a human or a wild boar. Wild boar is always focused on the earth. And they never look up. When I walk among the wild boars of Hawaii at night, when I run into them, they don't see me. They're looking down. I have to scrape my foot on the gravel of the road, and then they'll run away. They're so earthbound, you see. If they hear something, then they'll run, you see. So these senses are all earthbound, see. They're outward going. That's their defect. They have great power in them, like fire is in them, right? Fire is in the eyes. That's how the eyes see, by fire. But it's not just physical fire. The inward eye has a fire to it too. That's what you want to get a hold of. Thine eye be single. So these are teachings that come out of this study of cause and effect. Nimitta, it's called. Maya consists of nama, name, rupa, form, nimitta, cause and effect, time, kala, and space, desha. Nama, rupa, kala, nama, desha, nama, rupa, kala, and nimitta, cause and effect, name, form, time, space, and causality, in other words. That's Maya. Guess what? Maya then extends all the way up to the Trinity, because the Trinity has form too. See? It's all Maya. And I am none of that. See? I am pure conscious awareness. I am Atma Brahma. Even sounds like it reads in English. I am Atma Brahma, spelled A-Y-A-M. But it sounds like I am again, right? So, whatever way you cut it, it means the same thing. I am beyond the 24 cosmic principles. I always was, always will be. And guess what? The 24 cosmic principles have spilled out of my consciousness. I had the coming together of a sperm and the ovum in the mother's womb. That wasn't my beginning. That was the beginning of a physical body. My beginning is not, and never was. I have no beginning. I have no middle. I have no end. I am the timeless, spaceless, birthless, deathless, nameless, formless, causeless, effectless Atman. That's what you're saying when you say I am. Thou art he from whom all worlds are born. So I just wanted to show this. We've looked through it before, and it really deserves a whole class to look at it. But basically, just know that the physical effect comes out of nature, the efficient cause, and as its effect, and the primordial cause is the cause of the efficient cause, that is, life force, prana. Man does not live by bread alone. That's where you would trace that. And then that prana is at the beck and call of intelligence, buddhi, and chitta, thoughts, and mind, and ego, and that's the subtle cause of things. That subtle cause is again, in turn, based on the cosmic cause, which are principles like time, space, causality, and niyata, kalas, raga, phases of time, the soul, knowledge, vidya, all of that comes before. Anterior to both life and mind is this Atman, is this intelligence. So it has to be either a very remote cause, or it might just be a causeless cause you have to look into. Brahman itself cannot be the effect of anything. It itself is the cause of all, yet it's not a cause. The word is that. So that's where you get to remote cause. Things like Om and Maha Shakti herself, you see, the great mind and unmanifested nature and so forth. Those are very, very subtle principles. In fact, we'd have to use the word causal, because this was subtle. But then you get to a causal effect. It means the first cause of a thing, its origin. And then you get beyond origins when you get to Brahman. So it's showing this chart in lieu, or in a correlation with Sloka 4 of chapter 4, 4.4. Now, 5 says, I'll just repeat it because we've already studied it. There is a single female of red, white, and black colors, those are the three gunas, who is unoriginated and who produces numerous offspring, all of this, that is. Mahaprakriti would be that female, and it produces all of that, all the way down. She's the cause of all of that, really, the ultimate cause of all that, with her word. See, that's why these are all called the remote cause. And who produces numerous offsprings resembling herself. By her side lies one unborn male, out of attachment to her, that's the bound soul, while another male nearby, also unoriginated, forsakes her after having enjoyed her. So, through with nature. It's called world weariness. I've seen enough sunrises and sunsets. I've had enough births and deaths. I've stayed long enough in the ocean of the physical, in the bath, to create wrinkles of old age again and again, you see. And now I'm done with it. I'm not coming back again. Have no hope for me forevermore for the world. I'm gone, and I'm gone forever, as Buddha put it. Or, architect of the universes, I have seen thee. I will not now create any more bodies, not bodies made of many more homes, he said, not homes made of wood, not homes made of stone, not homes made of flesh and bone, not homes made of wise conception. I've given up all homes. I've gone home to my eternal home. You see, Buddha said that about seeing Mahaprakriti and all her offspring. See, did he believe in the Vedas? Yes, you bet he did. He just didn't believe in their efficacy at the particular time he was born, because people weren't using the wisdom right. As Vivekananda said, everyone, Buddha and all the great seers of India, happened to blame religion for the problems, you see. But I can prove that if you study these religious wisdom right, you will not find religion fault. You'll see that the fault all happened in your own head, your own mind. And that this is the eternal truth brought to you by such great rishis as Lord Buddha and Jesus. So you have to look into the times they were born into, like Muhammad at his time with his warlike country around him on all sides. So the Quran seems to take on a lot of warlike connotations, you see. That was just a product of the time he was living in, defending his borders and so forth. So yeah, but the scripture still smacks of these strong truths about Allah, about the paradise that you go to, higher paradise that you arrive at, and so forth. It's far beyond lower heavens. I mean, that's why we would study Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, to know that there's earth, lower heaven, and higher heaven, right? But what about the other realms within you that are beyond those three worlds? They want you just to bring peace to those three worlds first, right? Bring peace to your waking state, bring peace to your dreams, bring peace to your deep sleep state, or realize it's there. Then you can get good sometimes, feels bad at other times. Process, you see. And he looks up to his friend on the upper branch. He says, I think I will become like him. And flies up to the upper branch and sits there and never partakes of anything again, just sits in his own nature. See? Famous, famous Vedic story out of the Upanishads. You hear it all the time, Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Two birds of beautiful plumage who are inseparable friends reside on the self-same tree. So which tree do you want to reside on? Do you want to be in the tree of yoga? Or would you rather take a tree of samsara? This is what we will start with tomorrow at class, looking at these two trees. In accordance with the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, thank you for your divine presence here, your concentration, your precious attentions, which help me share this wisdom with you. And we will see you all tomorrow after our worship of Divine Mother tonight here in Portland for Durga Puja. So let's end with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Damaso Ma Joytir Gamoya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamoya Abira Bira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.